You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast with George Edwards.
Hello and welcome back to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast and our match report the morning after Nottingham Forest's thrashing in the Europa League semi-final second leg at Villa Park as they fell out of the Europa League 4-1 on aggregate. I'm your host George Edwards. I'm joined by Tom Newton for this one, and both of us were at Villa Park last night. And Tom, multiple factors went wrong across the night, from who wasn't available, the setup of Vítor, key absentees, defensive frailties. For me, the biggest moment was the substitution that we saw on 71 minutes that saw Forest go to a back three, and literally it was just a back three, no support really from midfield or the full-backs. And 2-1 down, we're still in the tie. Yet those substitutions really opened us up, and from there we sort of threw the game away when we could have gone into the last 5 minutes still in the game. So that's where it went wrong for me at the biggest point. But what let us down the most for you last night, Tom?
Just lack of desire, belief. I think the inclusion of Gibbs White on the bench was just for an act of defiance. We all know, like looking at the pictures this morning, he had obviously his earrings in and everything. He was never going to play last night. And you don't need to be a medical expert. Looking at his facial injuries, he weren't going to play. It was just an act of like he's in the room kind of thing, and a bit of a morale boost. But we just didn't have the players last night. Once you take Anu out the side, Sangari out the side, Murillo, I know he come on, but we know he's just come back from injury. Gibbs White, I don't think he's going to play again this season. Look at his facial injuries. I just think, we just had no belief last night. I think we kind of I think it was lost in the tunnel, to be honest. It's sad to say that, but we just didn't have the strength and depth. And then you look at the bench, and the bench, it was a weak bench, wasn't it? No disrespect to the kids, but you're not going to throw them into a Europa League semi-final. And personally, after the game on Monday against Chelsea, Vítor had credit in the bank when he played that side, and we got the win, etc. But I would have gone through centre-halves last night and then had the wing-backs and packed the midfield with Anson, Dominguez, Yates and Igor Jesus off Wood. But it was evident last night that we just didn't cope with their midfield, McGinn, etc. They put a centre-back in midfield, and we didn't lay a glove on them. And there'd be a lot of players waking up this morning. There's a lot of regrets this morning, and I just think it's a massive opportunity missed. I really do. Because Europa League semi-finals, they don't come around often, do they? The last one was 42 years ago. So, and I know we've been, up until 4 seasons ago, we was out the Premier League for 23 years, and we had obviously ups and downs through the 90s, etc. But I think it's just a missed opportunity last night for Forest fans and the club.
You know what struck me by the end was that I think the whole season caught up with Forest in one night, and it was a night that showed the difference between Forest and Villa. You think Villa, it's their 3rd consecutive year in Europe. It's their 4th consecutive year in the top 5 of the Premier League. They've been building for nights like these for a very long time. They had the squad, and yes, we could talk about their performance on Sunday that they rested against Spurs, but everything about their football club was ready to come back, to fight back. They had a manager who knew exactly how to handle the occasion, whereas Forest, our squad caught us up. We're thrust into Europe unexpectedly. We signed those players. We have this managerial merry-go-round, and it's not the perfect prep for an evening like this. And I think by the end, it just proved the difference in the clubs. Forest had the fighting belief, maybe before the game more than Aston Villa. But apart from that, everything about the club wasn't set up in the way that Aston Villa were. And what is it about Villa Park and not having fit players? A couple of years ago, we had Dominguez at right wing-back. Before that, we had Niakate playing left-back. Under Nuno, that went catastrophically wrong, Tom. It just seems like every time we come to Villa, we're not ready, and Villa look a club, not just a team, but a club, a step above Forest. And maybe that's, that we're a few years behind them in terms of progression.
Yeah, I think you're pretty much bang on there. They've got a serial winner in Unai Emery. He's done very well in Spain, hasn't he? He came to Arsenal, he got obviously ridiculed for how he talks and everything, and they never gave him a chance there. He's come to Aston Villa, and he's got Aston Villa where Aston Villa fans think the club should be at top end of the Premier League. They haven't won anything for 30 odd years, so when they play Freiburg in a couple of weeks. They're going to be red hot favourites for that. I just think it was a bridge too far for us last night. With the team, what was picked. I mean, as soon as I knew there was a massive imbalance in the side last night. Cunha, for how good he is, he's not a right back, is he? And I think when the ball come to him quite a few times, he got caught in possession. He weren't quick enough with the ball, and he wasn't the only one last night. Anderson, there's just a lack of movement, lack of desire, and obviously players taking that responsibility. Caught up with us last night. Villa were absolutely at it. I know that obviously they got dogs abuse on Sunday when they played Spurs, and there was like lack of desire, application, and all of that. But I think we was a bit like it last night, wasn't we? We just like I said earlier, we lost the belief before the kickoff, to be honest, because of obviously how we're set up and personnel not being there. But a lot of us have played football, haven't we? In terms of you turn up on a Saturday or Sunday, if your 4 or 5 top players aren't playing, you're playing top of the league, your belief just goes downhill. And I mean, I know people might think, the professional football is enough off, but when you haven't got a Gibbs White, when you haven't got a Sangari, when you haven't got an Aina, it's going to obviously catch up with you. And it did last night, and we didn't lay a glove on Villa. I mean, it wasn't until late on when Martinez had that save from Ryan Yates, which was basically a pass back, wasn't it? And we couldn't get Jesus in the game last night. Hutchinson, he had that shot in the first half, but Wood was a bit non-existent, and that was it. And it was just a matter of once that first goal going, can Forest hold out? And we did hold out for a bit, but we'll get to it in a minute. The penalty was absolutely stupid, and I think as soon as that second goal went in, even though there's still a lot on the game to go, the just belief in that away section last night, it just sat, and you just knew what was going to happen. And I don't want to be all doom and gloom. I'm proud of the journey we've been on. It's been enjoyable. The trips what we've been on, enjoyable, because I've never done it before. But yeah, it is gutting to wake up this morning knowing that there's a lot of regrets there, and we're not going to a Europa League final because they don't come around that often, do they?
And I mean, Forest were without, as you mentioned, half of their first choice outfield 11 in Hudson-Odoi, Sangare, Murillo, Aina. You know, those players sells as well in goal. Obviously, the rotation comes. You're without a lot of your key players in there. So, and Gibbs White as well, as we mentioned. So, Forest almost were set up to fail, you think, before the game. We'll go into the starting 11 then. So Ortega played in goal. We had a back four of Cunha, Milenkovic, Morata and Williams, Dominguez and Anderson in midfield, McAtee, Jesus and Hutchinson behind captain Chris Wood up front. Now, it's obviously emerged after the game that Forest really only had a fit squad, or outfield players of 13, with Bakwa and Yates on the bench and Luca, the only also fit players that weren't selected. What do you make of Pereira selecting those players who weren't fit on the bench? Obviously, we know how much he's emphasised the family atmosphere and wants the players to be together. So what do you make of him choosing players that weren't available? And as you mentioned, you sort of feel that Bakwa should have started and Forest should have maybe been in a back three.
Yeah, I think he had what he had at the end of the day, and I think it was just like, we'll take Sangare, stick him on the bench, Murillo, and just to a bit of let's keep the travelling squad together, a bit morale boosting, maybe put a bit of fear into Aston Villa, thinking, Gibbs White's on the bench. If we've got to basically get the job done before he makes the field, but obviously he was never fit. So I think it was just an act of defiance from Vítor. I mean, like I says, he brought Sinclair on towards the end just as a bit of a runner, but I think it was about 4 players from the under-23s on the bench. So then Luca, he's flattered to deceive, hasn't he? So he hasn't been great. So I think it's just a case of he had what he had, but I mean, hindsight's a great thing, but I would have gone 3 centre-halves last night and try and stifle Villa that way. And at least you can see what was happening. That was the plan, kind of thing. Just to try. I know it's incredibly hard, but try and preserve that 1 goal advantage. But yeah, it was evident in the first half that McGinn, Rodgers, Tielemans, they just come through our midfield like hot night fruit butter, and we had nothing to obviously stop that. And and obviously brought Yates on, didn't we, at half time for McAtee, wasn't it? But we needed to pack that midfield, and by the time they got their second goal, Hens need to stay. Like we threw the towel in, and yeah, the better side won on the night, and obviously they're in the final and we're not.
So in terms of the start of the game, then, I mean, it was quite a nervy start, to be fair. I think particularly defensively, both teams looked a bit jittery. Now, that was expected with Forest sort of makeshift defence with two of our sort of four starters not starting. Um, Villa, probably their setup surprised people with Lindelof in midfield, but that allowed them to utilise wide areas a lot better. They sort of set up with that back three in possession, Digne and Cash pushing wide, which allowed McGinn and Rodgers to tuck inside in midfield and pretty much overload us in any attacking sense. I mean, they had a lot of set pieces early on. They didn't really create many chances from open play, and you felt frustration building around Villa Park that was primarily aimed at Forest and their sort of time wasting, if you like, even though we weren't really taking that long. But you felt sooner enough, if Villa didn't take the lead, that would convert onto the players, particularly with a lot of the angst that they felt over the last few weeks. From a Forest perspective, our attack looked pretty non-existent, didn't it? We had the odd flicker of hope. We had that chance that McAtee played a brilliant ball across to Hutchinson. He cut inside and curled a shot just wide of the first half. But I think we only had two shots in the first half, Tom. So did you mind that? I know you sort of mentioned there wasn't really a plan, but it was obvious Forest were there to defend. Did that bother you?
It did in a sense because we was inviting pressure onto ourselves. Cunha, like I says, I like Cunha as a centre back, but he's no right back, and he was like taking a lot of time get the ball out of his feet and what to do with it. He didn't look overly comfortable last night playing at right back, and yeah, I just thought it was a sense of inevitability that they will get a big chance, and that big chance did come out. I think the ball went over the top. The start of the move, the ball went over the top, and Milenkovic and Ortega got in. I wouldn't say got in each other's way, but it was Milenkovic took a bit of responsibility, but we wasn't set up because he tried to play the ball down the line, got intercepted, and then Buendia got down our right, didn't he? Their left, and I think it's feeble defending. You've got Cunha there, dangles a leg, doesn't really do a lot. Anderson doesn't do a lot. Milenkovic doesn't cover himself in glory because he's let the ball come into the box, and Ollie Watkins can't miss, can he? And he was just the first goal, stating the obvious last night, was absolutely massive. And if it was come from a Villa perspective, it was early on, which it wasn't too early, but it was still in the first half. We had a mammoth task, and as soon as they got their goal, it was pretty much all Villa, wasn't it? And then we'll talk about it in a sec, but they soon scored the second goal. But yeah, a lot of regrets last night. A lot of what ifs, and unfortunately, if you want to get to a final, you can't have too many moments like that where you're thinking, "Oh, we could have done this, we could have done that." We didn't, did we? And hence why it's a bit downbeat this morning because, like I says, it would have been lovely for the club to prepare for a final in Istanbul on the 20th of May. But unfortunately, it's Aston Villa.
And Villa were pushing down that left-hand side, or their left, our right, a lot. Buendia was having a lot of space. And, I mean, I think McGinn and Cash were pretty non-existent in the first half because everything was coming down Forest right, their left. They saw the weakness and they targeted it. And you've got to give credit. And how much do you give credit to Unai Emery? Because that was not a conventional setup, really, to what Aston Villa do. I think Lindelof's played in midfield a few times, but not that often. But it was just everything about the occasion, from targeted Forest weakness, the 11, the substitutions, the freedom that it gave Buendia. And I know Vítor Pereira has, half his squad not available, as I mentioned, but did you think that, I mean, we like Pereira, we love what he's given us, and I don't think Forest will be in this position without him, but did the gulf in managerial class show by the end?
It's like anything in life. If you got the tools to do the job, and it's the best tools to do the job, you're going to do well, aren't you? And last night, and we had the answers, and we didn't because we just didn't have the personnel to combat whatever he was going to do. We was very restricted of, obviously, the players available. And, Emery, he's a very good coach, very good manager. He's a serial winner. He's won a lot of trophies in his career. And he had all the answers to do the job. Hence the 4-0 win last night, and we didn't. And that's a fact. And obviously our bit of desire. And like I said earlier, there's a lot of regrets this morning. But yeah, Emery had the tools to do the job, and hence why he's got the job done. Well, the semi-final done.
So half time on aggregate, it was Villa 1, Forest 1.
the 1865 Match Report.
Hello, welcome back to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast, and our match report after Forest faltered in the Europa League, falling out at the semi-final stage at Villa Park. Now, at half-time, Vítor Pereira made his first substitution. Ryan Yates came on for James McAtee. I mean, you could say maybe it was a bit harsh for McAtee. He showed a bit of promise, but by the end of the half, he just was physically out of the contest, wasn't he? And I think maybe Forest did need that bit of beef in midfield. Yates sort of came on as an attacking midfielder to start with, then he dropped next to Dominguez and Anderson went out wide. And I think that uncertainty really summed Forest up, didn't it? Because it was all very disjointed. Were you expecting any other changes at half-time, Tom, or was it more the mental side that you were expecting Vítor Pereira to change?
I was expecting... Yates did come on, but I was expecting probably to go through centre-backs and bring Dylan Backwell on and, like I said earlier, and go with that formation. But it didn't happen, so obviously took McAtee off, who I thought was doing okay in the game. Brought Yates on, but yeah, it didn't really alter anything, did it? I can see him obviously trying to bring him on just to beef up the midfield with obviously Dominguez Anderson in there, but as soon as he come in, we've got a bit exposed on the wings, didn't we? And so it was another factor of, Emery last night identifying a weakness of us and obviously punishing us for it. And like for the penalty, as soon as it happened in the ground, I thought VAR was going to have a look at this. He's put, was it Lindelof or Pau Torres? I can't remember.
Torres, wasn't it? Milenkovic on Torres.
Yeah, it's so naive. Obviously, I don't wish this on like Acuna or an Abbott, but if they did it, you kind of think, well, inexperience there, a bit of naivety. But this is Nikola Milenkovic. I've got so many caps for Serbia, played in international tournaments. There's going to be 20-odd cameras around the ground. And yeah, as soon as he did it, and we can't have any complaints because there's some Forest fans on Twitter this morning saying, oh, it's a bit harsh, but were they saying the same thing about last week?
Yeah. I was just going to say that because they're two very similar, not in terms of what happened, but in terms of you can't do that in the modern day. Maybe a few years ago, you could have got away with that. But with the current rules, particularly in UEFA, who are very tight on handball, very tight on contact in the box, with all the cameras looking around, you cannot do that in the modern day. You would expect somebody of Milenkovic's experience in the moment like that to be the one that is guiding people, not doing something like that. Yeah,
I know Milenkovic likes to be touch tight, doesn't he? And obviously he does sail close to the wind. There's like a couple of times last season, wasn't there, in the Leicester game where another referee or VAR might have given a penalty on what he had on Vardy. And he does like to be touch tight kind of thing. But yeah, pulling him back, it's like sense of inevitability. As soon as Glenn Nyberg went to the screen, you just knew it was going to be a penalty. And he nearly got close to it, didn't he, Ortega? But 2-0 and their tails are up and we just didn't have an answer, did we? And as soon as the second goal went in, it was like we obviously tried to chase the game, left a lot of pockets. There was like one of the goals where the ball just got smashed up and it was on at 2-on-2 and we didn't really have a left back, did we? And they just exposed us and then it's 3-0. So, but yeah, it's very, very disappointing with a massive opportunity like that and we've just passed it. I passed it away so easily.
I mean, for me, this is where the game hinged, because I know you're 2-1 down, but you're not by no means out of the tie. When Dia tucked it away, I thought it was Villa's best player on the night. Well taken penalty. As you mentioned, Ortega got close. You wonder whether Sells would have got closer, but, he hit it with some fear, some venom, and you can't really expect that. But after that, Forest conceded a goal that was without for offside. It was actually very similar to the McGinn goal that we'll get to. I think McGinn then had a shot straight at Ortega, and that was all within sort of 5-6 minutes of Forest going 2-1 behind. But then we started to weather it. We started to regain a foothold. And I just felt a bit of defensive comfort coming around. And I know we're 2-1 down. I know we're 20 minutes to go. But Pereira then brought on Backward, brought on Luca. Forest went to a back three that included Nico Williams. And then had Backward and Hutchinson at fullback, but it was wing back really. And they didn't really offer any defensive support. And I mentioned at the top of the show, this, for me, is where Forest really lost the tie or lost any chance of getting anything out of it because I thought we were still in it. We were gaining defensive confidence. We looked okay. And I thought we could have got to the last 5 minutes at 2-1 down And then that's what happens in football. You get forward, you probably get another chance. And that's all it felt like Forest needed. But I think Pereira's current confidence and optimism got the better of him. He threw back Quaron, who, as we mentioned, has done all right at wing back, but that's when he's had three centre backs behind him and a more defensive fullback on the other side. And it wasn't with respect against teams of the calibre of Aston Villa. So I just thought those changes really opened us up. And then I think 7 minutes later, after Pereira made those changes, Forest were 3-1, or well, 4 goals down, 3 goals out of the tie. And the first goal that McGinn scored proved it. It was a long ball punted over the top that just took Forest midfield completely out of it. Header was won to the back post, and it's a 3-on-2 that McGinn sweeps home. And then, very similarly, 3 minutes later, he does a similar thing at the back post, and Forest are really down and out. And Forest have got to be careful there, Tom, because we don't want the season to peter out. It's very rare that Forest have nothing to play for at the end of the season. I mean, we're not mathematically safe in the Premier League, but you'd think we're almost nearly there. How does Pereira ensure that Forest have the fight to go again, given how disappointing this chance is and how much of a spurned opportunity that it is?
Well, it's going to take a couple of days, obviously we need to lick our wounds and obviously prepare for Sunday's game at home to Newcastle. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot from him and his staff to obviously G the players up again, because, like this morning, I feel disappointed. I feel, and I mean, there are going to be fans out there saying, "Ha, you over celebrated last week." Well, I didn't. If you look back at my social media, there's still a long way to go. Other fans had other ideas, but it hurts because, like I said earlier, these opportunities don't come around every season, do they? And I mean, we're not going to be in Europe next year. I know there's still a mathematical. I think there's a 1 in 1,000 chance that we might qualify, but in terms of we've got to win all our games, and it ain't happening, is it? So, and I've absolutely loved this going away to places like Seville, Utrecht, Porto, etc. The streets of Birmingham for a European trip. But yeah, I'm just downbeat this morning, and obviously we've got to cheer ourselves up, because you never know in football. It's like a lot of fans are saying, well, Arsenal are going to beat West Ham. That's near enough a given, but nothing's a given in football. So we've got to do our side of the bargain and make sure that we do what we need to do to preserve our Premier League status for next season. But it's going to take a good time to obviously overcome this, because, like it says, it is gutting that we got so close yet. If we went to got eliminated by swinging some punches, you kind of like thinking, well, we tried our best, but like I said earlier, there's a lot of what ifs and what might have been, and I think that's the tough bit, because if we could turn the clock back to 8 o'clock yesterday at Villa Park and change things, a lot of things would be different, wouldn't they? But the world and football doesn't work like that.
Yeah, we're going to have some more reflections, but first we're going to get a view from the opposition from Neil from For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast.
Hello, everybody. This is Neil from For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. And first of all, I want to say commiserations to the Nottingham Forest on, I suppose, on a semi-final whereby I think home advantage had a huge part to play in that game tonight. Now, I did the preview with Rich, and I wasn't very confident that Aston Villa had that performance in their locker at this time of the year. But I think that the tone was set early by Emi Buendia, by Ollie Watkins, and Villa came out of the traps really early in this game. Forest setup, I thought the way Forest setup was actually brilliant. I thought it was perfect. It was the way that, to protect the 1-0 lead should have been set up. But I think a couple of things happened in that first 10-15 minutes that they probably allowed Villa to fire themselves up, that allowed Villa to get the bit between their teeth. And I think a lot of those came from Emi Buendia. I just thought he was absolutely outstanding in that first half, and probably he was my man in the match. Actually, I think he was outstanding for every minute he played today, Emi Buendia, and that's not a typical performance that you see from Emi Buendia. Like, he covered every blade of grass 5-6 times. You know, his level of effort was huge. The fact that he gets the assist for the first goal, which was absolutely pivotal. He had no right to run through those players. But at the same time, we were fortuitous in the fact that there was a couple of slips and there was a couple of ricochets that came back to him. And then he makes that run into the box and no one can touch him. Because if you touch him, it's going to be a penalty. And he plays that ball across. And I think what will be underrated in that goal is Ollie Watkins pulled back to the back post. And it was just the timing of that goal, I think, was so pivotal. So pivotal. Gives Villa something to I suppose to cling on to as the half goes on. The rest of the half then was, I think it was played out at a decent pace, but I don't think there was any, like, I think Villa were making the running in it, but I don't think there was anything too huge in that game. Obviously, Omari Hutchinson had that effort that just went wide, but then in the 58th minute when Villa get the penalty, which, you know, I think by any measure was a penalty, and I think it was pretty silly from Milinkovic, because Pau Torres ain't getting his foot to that, I don't think. I spoke to Rich about Aston Villa penalty takers, and it was literally drawn out of a lucky bag to see who was going to take that penalty, and delighted that Emi Buendia stepped up and took it, because he stuck it away. A man who's brimming in confidence. So he gets the assist for the first, gets the goal, and then Villa go 2-1 up, and then Villa are in the ascendancy. I thought Forest struggled then to get back into to move through the gears. Obviously, they have that gilt-edged chance, or I won't say gilt-edged because it was a brilliant chance from Chris Wood, saved by Emi Buendia. If I'm not mistaken, Chris Wood was offside in that sequence of play, but still needed to be saved by Emi Buendia. And then Villa go on to close it out with 2 goals from John McGinn. And I think that was a killer for Forest, because Forest made those substitutions, if I'm not mistaken, in the 71st minute or 72nd minute, where they brought off Chris Wood, and they brought off, was it McAtee? And they brought off Bankwa and Luciano Luca. And then Villa killed all the impetus of those substitutions then with the John McGinn goal, which makes it 3-1 in aggregate on the 77th minute. And then McGinn comes in again on the 80th minute. And look, John McGinn is so pivotal to Aston Villa. He's John McGinn is just going to be an Aston Villa legend. There's a whole different video to be done on John McGinn and what it means to Aston Villa. But what I will say is that tonight was very much Villa's night. Tonight could have very easily been Nottingham Forest's night. We take nothing for granted in the fact that Nottingham Forest have been a superb foe over the last two legs. I didn't expect this performance out of Aston Villa today, but I will always say this, and I've said it numerous times, and I will continue to say it. The Nottingham Forest fans are an incredible bunch of fans. The team are an incredible team. Anyway, I just want to say that Nottingham Forest are proper football club, and as I say, Aston Villa will go to fly the flag for English football in the Europa League final, and hopefully we will do the league proud.
The 1865 Match Report.
Thanks, Neil. And let's talk about the tie that I think reflected the season for Forest, because it had everything. It had Forest taking the lead, having confidence, going to Villa Park without loads of players, with uncertainty. And I think it really reflected Forest's season, but in the end, they just fell short. It's been absolutely magical to be watching Forest in Europe. I've got 7 stamps on my passport that I never would have had if it wasn't for this season. Well, for last season, firstly, and the sort of positive spirit that got Forest into European competition. And then this season, it's been almost an escape, really. And you probably can't say that about Braga. But apart from that, the trips have just been absolutely brilliant. To be away with people from your city in foreign cities, foreign lands that you wouldn't dream of going, watching your football club has been absolutely magical. It's provided some respite from a very torrid season. Some might also say it's provided a sort of bitter distraction from the Premier League, and maybe without Europe we would have been a lot safer in the Premier League. But how do you reflect on being back in Europe, Tom? Some of the City Ground nights that it's brought us, hearing that Europa League anthem that every time it blared through always gave me goosebumps. How do you reflect on the season despite the disappointment that sits this morning?
Really proud. It's been an absolute honour and a privilege to actually follow your team in Europe. I mean, clubs like ours, it's like we're not like an Arsenal or Liverpool where it's every single season. It's like we've had like gaps of 30 odd years, haven't we? Kind of thing. Yeah, it's been brilliant. Met some brilliant people. Gone to brilliant cities. I mean, it's cost quite a bit of money, so the bank account needs to recover, kind of thing. But it's just been brilliant, hasn't it? Like going to these like cities and donning like the main squares with your flags and just being around people who you've been supported the club with for years, kind of thing. It's just been brilliant, hasn't it? And yeah, it's gutting that we're not going to be doing it next season because clubs like ours, it's kind of like the only time you tend to go on European trips have been like pre-season trips if you can be bothered to do them, kind of thing. So yeah, it's been brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and I think we've done the club proud of how we've behaved. And there's been hardly any instance, have they, as a whole. And yeah, from Seville, obviously people have gone to Istanbul to see against Fenerbahce. Yeah, it's been an honour to obviously support us in Europe. So yeah, a lot of great memories. But sadly, it's come to an end on the at Villa Park last night.
Just finally, I want to touch on Vítor Pereira because there's been a lot of talk about his job after the season, whether he's just here as a short-term fix. A lot of people looking at what happened at Wolves when he got a transfer window and things didn't really go to plan. Now, I don't know how much you can read into that because it felt like Wolves were building for relegation for a multitude of years, really. And it almost felt like Pereira's job hinged on winning the Europa League, that he might be given a chance if he did that. And now it looks like Premier League safety is the only thing he can point to. I mean, it's pretty evident that without him, Forest wouldn't have been in a European semi-final because under Sean Dyche, they were heading one way and Europe wasn't remotely prioritised, and motivating the players that played in Europe wasn't remotely prioritised. Now, we saw his tactical sort of shortcomings maybe tonight for the first time in a very long time, and he's earned a lot of credit in the bank, Tom. What are your thoughts on Pereira? Should he stay or should he go? Or is that a bit knee-jerk just after one poor performance that ultimately has defined the season?
It's a bit knee-jerk. I mean, there's going to be a lot of emotions running high this morning about what he should have done, what he didn't do, this, that and the other. Like you said, first and foremost, we was going one way under Sean Dyche, and that was down. After the, I mean, in my view, I was never a fan of Sean Dyche. He should have got the sack at 7:00 at Elland Road on that Friday night after that team selection, because that was just an utter disgrace what he did in terms of putting Zach Abbott under a bus, putting Einer at left back, making out that Luka Netz isn't ready when he's played over 100 games for Borussia Mönchengladbach in the Bundesliga. So I was never a fan of Sean Dyche.
And imagine if Nets was in our Europa League squad. Could have played last night. Could have solved the issues.
I would have balanced that back line out. I mean, I'm not saying he would have been the factor that we would have won last night, but he would have made it a bit more balanced. So and Sean Dyche would have tossed the Europa League off probably the Fenerbahce stage. So yeah, but Vítor Pereira, he's given his hope, hasn't he? He's integrated like the fringe players where Sean Dyche put him under a bus. But to answer the opening question about his future, all depends with Mr. Marinakis what he wants to do, where he sees the club. Because at the end of the day, Vítor Pereira he come in at probably a tower low Seb, and he's the first remit was keep us in the Premier League now, and that looks a distinct possibility that we could be safe by this Sunday if we get a point, or if we don't get anything and West Ham lose, then we're a Premier League club again next season, which be our longest stint in the Premier League since its inauguration in '92. Because there was the longest we was in the '90s was 3 years, from like '94 to '97. So yeah, 3 seasons, wasn't it? So yeah, there's a lot of good managers available this summer. I mean, Marco Silva looking like he's going to leave Fulham. Areola's leaving Bournemouth, but the money is potentially on him going to Crystal Palace, what I saw yesterday. So yeah, I think it's a big sum of what Forest want to do, because the last 3 out of the last 4 years we've been in the Premier League, we've been treading water, haven't we, at the wrong end of the table, and we've got to start, if we want to be like a sustainable club, we need to like start looking at not having too much chaos behind the scenes in terms of the hierarchy. We need a settled manager, whoever that might be, Perez, somebody else. Need a settled team with like not too much like daft recruitment and etc. And have a proper good look at it in the summer and make sure we right many of the wrongs what we've had this season, because we have somewhat salvaged something out of the season. 4 managers, we've got to a Europa League semi-final. Like I said, we're looking distinct possibility that we're going to retain our Premier League status, but we've got to make sure that we can be probably mid-table and not have a season like this, because it has been chaotic, hasn't it? It's been a joke at times, but thankfully like I said, it's looking possibility that we're going to be a Premier League club, and we need to sort the club out, because I don't want to be fighting relegation again next season. I want to be obviously looking at around 10th place.
And as I mentioned to Katie in the Chelsea report, that apart from last season when obviously we completely overachieved, it's still our highest points total since coming back to the Premier League, and we've still got 3 games to go. It's the first time, apart from last season, we've got over 40 points, and we're comfortably over that mark now. So it's a platform that Forest have to build on, and hopefully with Pereira they can do that.
And with the highest points total this season, apart from last season, stating obviously it had to be needed. We've had to pull rabbits out of the hat against like the likes of Chelsea, the 5-0 against Sunderland, because if we didn't, we'd be going down, because this season...
It's very competitive.
This season, I know Bournemouth and Wolves have gone, but the third place isn't a Luton Town or a Sheffield United or Southampton. The 2 who look likely to go down, one of them is either West Ham or Spurs, and they're like stapled Premier League clubs, aren't they, with like massive fan bases, big stadiums, obviously over 50,000 kind of thing. So we're lucky that we haven't been worse than them, because if we were, we'd be heading to the Championship. So thankfully for Vítor, since he's come in, obviously he's got a bit of stability, a bit of shape, and pointed us in the right direction. But like I said earlier, it's a massive summer. Whether Edu will get the sack, we don't know. But yeah, there's got to be a lot of like joined up thinking this summer.
Well, thanks for joining me, Tom, and thank you, Paul, from the View from the Opposition. We'll be back for the Newcastle report at the weekend. And if you want to find links of where to listen to the podcast or the social media, you can find them at the words 1865.football. But for Nottingham Forest, it's not in Istanbul again, but it's another European campaign. They gave one generation a chance to bask in nostalgia and another to have their own experience of this magical football club. It felt like Forest had more to give, but ultimately they didn't have the quality to overcome Aston Villa. But the memories made in this historic season, for many different reasons, will never be forgotten. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.